Hey, have you ever met someone who looks completely unbothered, like nothing ever gets to them, but something about it just doesn't feel real? Like they stay calm, they don't react, they act like they don't care at all, but deep down, you can feel there's something else going on? Hi, I'm Aurora, and today we're talking about something that's a lot more common than people admit. The zodiac signs who pretend they don't care, but actually feel way more than they show. And I'm telling you right now, this is not what it looks like on the surface. Because some people don't express emotions the way you expect, and that doesn't mean they don't have them. Sometimes it means they feel things even deeper. And here's the interesting part. Each sign hides it differently. Some go quiet, some act distant, some distract themselves, and others become almost impossible to read. So if you've ever felt like, why do they act like this doesn't matter? Or, do they even care at all? Stay with me, because this is going to make a lot more sense. And also, I'm curious, what's your sign? Drop it in the comments. I actually read them, and I love seeing who's here. And one more thing before we get into it. Yesterday's video was interesting. We talked about the zodiac signs who feel everything but never say it. So if you haven't seen that yet, watch this one first, and then go check it out after. Because together, they connect in a way you probably won't expect. All right, let's get into this, because the number one sign on this list doesn't just hide their emotions, they master it. And most people never see what's really going on. Let's start. All right, so let's start with a sign that a lot of people think they understand, but honestly, most people don't. Scorpio. Scorpio is probably one of the biggest examples of this, because on the outside, they look controlled, calm, unreadable, like nothing really shakes them. But that's not the truth, not even close. Scorpio feels everything, and I mean everything, just not in a way that's obvious. See, Scorpio doesn't react right away. They don't explode. They don't show vulnerability easily, because for them, emotions are power, and power is something they protect. So instead of expressing what they feel, they observe, they analyze, they watch every detail, your tone, your behavior, what you say, and what you don't say. And while everyone else thinks, oh, they don't care, Scorpio is already 10 steps ahead emotionally. But here's where it gets deeper, and most people miss this part. Scorpio doesn't hide their feelings because they don't have them. They hide them because they don't trust easily. Trust is everything for them. And until they feel safe, truly safe, they would rather stay silent than risk being exposed. And that silence? It confuses people. It creates distance. It makes others question, do they even feel anything? But the truth is, they feel more than most people could handle. They just don't let you see it. And if you've ever dealt with a Scorpio like this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes, the less they say, the more is actually going on inside. Now, Scorpio hides emotion through intensity and control. But the next sign does something completely different. They don't hide emotions because of trust. They hide them because they've learned that showing too much doesn't always work in their favor. And this one, people misunderstand all the time. Capricorn. Now this one is different, because Capricorn doesn't hide emotions in an intense way like Scorpio. They hide them in a quieter way, more controlled, more structured. Capricorn is the type of person who always seems put together, focused, responsible, like they always know what they're doing. And because of that, people assume they're emotionally distant, cold, even detached sometimes. But that's not really what's happening. Capricorn doesn't ignore emotions, they just don't let emotions control them. They've learned, sometimes the hard way, that reacting emotionally can cost them something. Respect, stability, control over their own life. So instead of expressing everything they feel, they process it internally, silently. And here's where people get it wrong. They think, if Capricorn cared, they would show it. But Capricorn doesn't work like that. They show care through actions, through consistency, through being there when it actually matters, not through dramatic reactions or emotional displays. And if something really affects them, they don't panic. They don't react impulsively. They go quiet. They think. They try to understand it before they say anything. And sometimes, that silence creates a misunderstanding. Because to the outside world, it looks like indifference, like they're unaffected. But inside, they're carrying more than they show. They just don't feel the need to prove it to everyone. And honestly, that's where their strength comes from. But it also creates distance, because not everyone understands that kind of emotional language. And maybe you've experienced this with someone who never says much, but somehow is always there. That's Capricorn. Now, Capricorn hides emotions through control and discipline. But the next sign, they take a completely different route. They don't just hide emotions, they detach from them. At least, that's what it looks like. And this one confuses almost everyone. Aquarius. Now this one is probably the most misunderstood of all. Because Aquarius doesn't just hide emotions, they seem like they don't have them at all. They come across as distant, detached, unbothered, like nothing really reaches them. And if you've ever dealt with an Aquarius, you've probably asked yourself at some point, do they even care? But here's the truth. They do. Just not in the way you expect. Aquarius feels things deeply, but they don't process emotions the same way most people do. Instead of diving into what they feel, they step back from it. They observe it. They try to understand it logically. It's almost like they remove themselves from the emotion, so they don't get overwhelmed by it. And that creates distance. Not because they don't care, but because that's how they protect themselves. Aquarius doesn't like emotional chaos. They don't like losing control of their thoughts. So when something hits them emotionally, instead of reacting, they disconnect. Just enough to stay in control. And to everyone else, that looks like indifference. But it's not. It's self-protection. Because deep down, Aquarius is sensitive in a very specific way. They feel things, but they don't always know how to express them emotionally. So they translate feelings into thoughts, into distance, into silence. And sometimes, that makes people feel like they don't matter to them. But the truth is, Aquarius just doesn't show attachment the way others do. They might not say it, they might not react, but that doesn't mean they don't feel it. It just means they're processing it differently. And if you've ever felt confused by someone like this, you're not alone. Because Aquarius doesn't give you obvious signals. They don't make it easy to read them. And maybe that's the point. Now, Scorpio hides emotion through intensity. Capricorn hides it through control. Aquarius hides it through detachment. But the last sign on this list? They do something even more subtle. They don't explode. They don't detach. They don't disappear. They overthink. They analyze. They stay quiet. And most people never realize how much they're actually feeling. Virgo. Now, this one is a lot more subtle. Because Virgo doesn't hide emotions in an obvious way, they don't act cold. They don't disappear. They don't detach completely. Instead, they go inward. Virgo feels deeply, but processes everything through the mind. So when something affects them, they don't react right away. They think. They analyze. They replay situations over and over again, trying to understand, what does this mean? What went wrong? What should I do next? And while they're doing all that, on the outside, they seem calm, normal, composed, like nothing really happened. But inside, it's the opposite. There's a constant internal dialogue, a need to make sense of everything, a need to organize emotions before expressing them. And because of that, Virgo often stays quiet, not because they don't care, but because they care enough to not react impulsively. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to make things worse. So they hold it in. They process it alone. And that creates a very specific kind of misunderstanding, because to others, it looks like distance, like emotional disconnection. But in reality, Virgo is just trying to understand what they feel before they show it. And sometimes, they take too long. Sometimes, people assume they don't care and walk away before Virgo ever gets the chance to explain. And that's the part that hurts the most, because they did care, a lot. They just didn't show it fast enough. So when you look at all of this together, you start to see a pattern. Some signs don't show emotion, not because they don't feel it, but because they experience it differently. Scorpio feels deeply, but hides it behind control. Capricorn feels strongly, but expresses it through actions. Aquarius feels everything, but processes it through distance. Virgo feels intensely, but needs to understand it first. And when you don't know that, it's easy to misinterpret them, to think they don't care, to assume they're cold, to believe they're unaffected, when in reality, they're just protecting something deeper. And maybe this changes the way you see certain people. Because sometimes it's not that they didn't care, it's just they didn't show it the way you expected. And that doesn't make it less real. It just makes it different. So the next time someone seems distant, quiet, hard to read, don't jump to conclusions too fast, because there might be a lot more happening beneath the surface than you realize. And honestly, this is something I see all the time, people misunderstanding each other, not because there's no feeling, but because there's no clarity. And sometimes, just understanding this changes everything. By the way, I'd really like to know which one of these signs made you stop and think a little. Was it you? Or someone you know? Tell me in the comments. I actually read them. And if this video made you look at things differently, save it. You might want to come back to this later, especially when something starts making more sense. And also, there's another video on the channel right now. Interesting facts about the zodiac signs. If this one resonated with you, you should definitely watch that one next. They connect in a way that's honestly kind of eye-opening. And yeah, I'll be here again tomorrow, same time, with something you probably didn't know you needed to hear. So if you want, stay close. See you in the next one.